Hi, folks. How are we doing? Ignore the talking that happened earlier. That was non-panel stuff. Now we're doing a panel, which is going to be all professional and serious like. Anyone that doesn't know who I am, I'm Ed. I have been talking about stuff relating to this panel with Milk for some years. And eventually we gave up and said, oh, we should probably talk to other people about it, shouldn't we? So we said we'd do a panel, and then we realized that while we know quite a lot about the things we wanted to talk about, we don't know as much as we would like to know, so we brought a professional. And so Noor's here as our definitely professional, definitely not overtired, and definitely not winging it person. But Noor really tried to give us a structure. Noor tried so hard to make us structure this shit. But what happened was that Milk and I sort of like brain splurged some notes onto a Google Doc. Noor went, should we have some structure this? Did some bullet points, and we may follow them. I think that's the best we have to offer. Noor then messaged us this morning, and I'm so tired. So, all bets.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm Ed. Hi. If you don't know me, then great. I'd much prefer that situation. Milk is awesome. A host of Grim Scenarios. Yeah, I mean.
Hey.
Yeah, let's say the less argumentative half of Grim Scenarios.
Bet you wouldn't say that if the other half was here.
I mean, I'd say it as long as I was this side of the desk. And Noor, you will have seen on many different streams being adminly perfect and paying attention, which neither of us do. Although I have to say that Noor has drawn Town Crier in 3 of my most recent 7 games, and died on either day 1 or night 2 on all of them. So has not had to do any of her own homework and has done everyone else's. It's great.
Died very happily.
Yeah.
Very happily.
Yeah, Noor. Do you want to tell people about professional things in case it's relevant, or do you want to? Yeah.
Yeah. I am a psychiatrist, which is very weird to share because it's not something I was very open about when I came into this community. But it's part of what drew me to the social deduction genre. I love focusing on interpersonal interactions and the different cognitive biases that come into play, and the social structure that is part of the game, and the behaviors that come up and the behaviors that we model as players. So we're going to be touching on that in this panel.
Don't mind me, I'm just scrolling down to the bottom of the notes.
To the rough outline.
Yeah, the rough outline that we put on the bottom, which is the best place for that.
I'm also a disorganized mess because I have unmedicated ADHD.
To be clear, we all have
unmedicated.
I genuinely considered printing a big picture of a squirrel to give to either Noor or Nina to just hold up every time that one of us has gone off down a rabbit hole. So a few things about this. Firstly, Noor is a professional and therefore will use terminology at times. I will do my best to pause and explain that terminology if it comes up. Noor will also do her best to do that. If we use language that doesn't make sense, please throw your hand in the air and we will pause and go, okay, noted, we'll explain what that thing is. It's also a fair warning because some of this is about both the internal psychological impact of other people's behavior and a lot of things that can to some people be a bit triggering if you're not prepared to have a conversation about how people think and how people respond to you. Fair warning, that's going to come up. If you're struggling with that, please either let us know or run, or find someone who can help you with whatever your particular concern is. If more than one person is running away, we're doing a very bad job. I don't think it's going to come up, but just in case someone is going to have sort of going to feel attacked, which you shouldn't, because hopefully it's all nice. But
I think it's also worth mentioning that all 3 of us will share stories of our own personal experiences, and so some of that will inevitably be flavored by our experiences as people with various different mental health situations, and our experiences of Clock Tower from those perspectives. So just be aware that we're going to share some personal things.
It's also, by definition, it's a lot of anecdata, because we don't have data. Like the gaming sphere is an area of research that has been noticed relatively recently, and there is a lot of research being done No one's come near Clock Tower particularly. No one's come near social deduction pretty much at all on a grander scheme. So if any of you work in any sort of data science, then this is a good thing to look into. Someone I know does, you may have seen on the Reddit, was it like last month? Subreddit last month was the annual questionnaire that Noor and who's the other person who does that with you? The survey that you released, was that not you? Am I getting
No,
mixed up?
I think
Oh no,
of
you
Elizabeth.
sent it to me and Elizabeth wrote it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, so there's a lot of people are doing sort of survey type research and things, but it's all survey based and it's all people choosing to respond. So there's not actually very much data on any of this. So we're going to be hypothesizing a lot. In Clock Tower, we're very often right. In this, we're guessing and don't. So you shouldn't take anything we say as gospel, but we're informed by, between us, a decade plus of experience of specifically Clock Tower and social deduction, and in other cases, a lot more of context around these social situations that apply across the board, not just in Clock Tower. So having done that bit.
Yeah. Maybe we start just by talking about, so one of the crucial central elements of what we want to talk about is social contracts. It's like just a central sort of piece of what the discussion has to center around, because it's where a lot of the psychological and social issues in Clock Tower start to sort of intersect. And one of the things that I think is the most, maybe the best things about Clock Tower is that Clock Tower has built into the rules. So everybody storytells, everybody has storytell. Has everybody played Trouble Brewing? Okay. Everybody that has ever storytold Trouble Brewing, hopefully you have read the rules. And by that, the rules sheet. There's a one-page rules sheet. We use it at conventions when we run Trouble Brewing for beginners. And it has 4 rules on it. And the 4th rule is play nice. So that is an explicit social contract, right? That is telling everyone who plays the game, you have to abide by this rule when you interact with other people in this game, right? It's not a game. It's not a game rule. It doesn't deal with the mechanics of the game. Most games that you pick up, if you've ever played The Gang or Twilight Imperium or Root or Poker, don't have a social contract rule built into them, right? So as a social deduction game, we have an explicit rule, one rule, play nice. And that's going to be interpreted differently by different people based on our backgrounds, right? And based on where we come from. And so inside of our individual communities, inside of your play group that you play with locally, inside of your online community, inside of our stream groups, right? We have social contracts, we have agreements, either explicit, that means we very clearly state them and tell everyone what that agreement is, the behavior we're going to abide by, or implicit, we all understand that a certain level of behavior is expected in this space. Okay, so that's just a good starting framework if you don't have a background in, like I do in philosophy or in sociology or in psychology, right? When we use the term social contract, we mean a set of rules, either spoken or unspoken, that we all agree to abide by together.
Incidentally, for anyone that doesn't know, the original rule 4 was don't be a dick. And they changed it because they didn't feel like they could put that in a rule book that you then published.
Yes.
And I think that's fair, but also it's very Australian and very funny to me. Because you can't say it in any other accent apart from "don't be a dick," which is just come on, mate. And it always entertains me. But so the thing to remember about social contracts is that every single interaction you go into has some level of social contract. Like if you walk up to someone anywhere in the street, there is a social contract that says you're not going to do anything unreasonable. And like, obviously we have laws, which are the explicit social contract, because a law is government is a social contract that we're choosing to abide by as a group of people, as a community. Those laws are all the explicit ones, but there's still implicit ones that I'm not going to, in the US, I'm not going to come and stand right next to you when I don't know you. Most people aren't doing that, and that's a completely implicit social contract. No, that's not written down anywhere. So this is the sort of thing that you're having to deal with. And the interesting thing in Clock Tower is that those social contracts develop on the fly, all the time, every game, every minute, as people play and as you learn each other and as you interact. And so the interesting thing we have in the Clock Tower scene is that we've turned up to this convention where there's, well, how many attendees are there? 600 something? So there's about 800 social contracts turning up to the convention with 600 people, all of whom have slightly different expectations. You're all coming into a space where you have to adjust those social contracts on the fly. Just because in your group you play a certain way doesn't mean that anyone else is going to be interested in that. And so you will have discovered that games here might have been a bit more homogenized than you're maybe used to, because everyone is going, well, I don't know where in the range of social contract we are, so I'm going to go to the middle, just in case. And so you get more these interesting sort of variations where, I don't know, people watch the TPI streams or Patters streams or Grim Scenarios or various others, and people play a really specific way, or they play in certain ways, and you then turn up to a convention and they don't play like that. It's like, yes, they don't know you. And this happens quite a lot. Like Patters is a great example. Patters is chaotic, but he's way more chaotic and way more willing to do something that's going to potentially be harmful to me than he is to any of you, because Patters has been one of my really close friends for years, and so he's willing to be like, it won't fucking mind. And so that is a social contract that explicitly interacts between me and Patters, but wouldn't apply to Noor. And wouldn't apply, actually, mostly it does. It mostly applies to Milk as well, to be fair. But so your social contracts don't just apply community-wide, they apply individually, and even sometimes just to yourself. And so you are going to change them all the time, and it's worth sometimes stopping and being like, if you're feeling uncomfortable, or if you think someone else was feeling uncomfortable, if you think there was an issue, it's often very easy to pause and think, well, what's the normal expectation here? Can we see the thing that's been broken? And most of the time you can, but because in the moment you're living your own life, everyone's the hero of their own story, you don't stop to think about other people's social contract and what might have been broken. But as soon as you stop and pause and empathize, you probably can. And so one of the first things I'd sort of flag here is that anytime you're thinking about this situation, it's a good sign you're thinking about it in the first place. But secondly, you almost certainly can find the thing that's wrong. It just requires you stopping being yourself long enough to see what the social contract is.
A way that most of you probably have experienced this is if you've played in a game with Marionette on script. A very common thing in the community at large is to turn to your neighbors and say, how do you feel about being told that you're the marionette, whether or not you are the marionette, right? There is a social contract. Ed doesn't have to ask me that question. Patters doesn't have to ask Ed that question, right? Like when you've played with the same group of people long enough, you just know that it's okay. Or alternately, you have a personal relationship. I don't have to ask Bunny if it's okay to lie to her about being a marionette. We've been friends for years, right? Like I can just be like, Bunny, you're my marionette, and Bunny probably won't believe me, right? But so that's a way. But like so for all of you, just a way that you can experience or kind of have an idea of the same experience is when you sit next to someone in a circle, would you feel comfortable just turning to them and lying to them and saying you're my marionette? Because for many people in the community, that's crossing a line. There are many people in the community for whom being lied to and told that you're the marionette when you're not isn't something that they're comfortable with. And so it's something most of us won't do in a game with strangers.
Mm-hmm.
So the example of this when it first came up, when we first released Marionette, anyone who watches TPI streams knows that Chiz doesn't fucking want to know. And he put something on the TPI server where we're sort of, our players are all based, saying that, and was saying, I don't want to make a big deal of this in front of the stream, in front of in terms of affecting the show, as it were. And I had to ping him and be like, no, make a big deal out of it. Because this is the sort of conversations that people need to be having. They need to realize it's completely normal to turn around and be like, I don't want to know. Yeah. You never tell me. Or to, because that's such a, in itself, the marionette isn't a character that drives a bad social interaction, but it has it's 100%, 200% more likely than almost any other character in Clock Tower to drive a bad social interaction. So why would we not hedge that risk? And so yeah, I do this. I do this on the DPI stream quite a lot. I turn around to people and go, you know how you have that conversation privately? We're going to have it again publicly. So if you want to be aware that we're going to have this conversation publicly, so that the community sees the behavior model that we want to see. We want to see people caring, so that other people can follow that model behavior.
And I think especially this starts to get in. So let me start in one place and then I'll move forward, and then I hope Noor can fill in this one. So this is where we start to get into what might be a danger zone for people who are dealing with various different mental health issues, whether that's neurodivergence or other mental health issues, right? And that line is very clear with Marianne. And there's some stories from when Blood on the Clock Tower was first being play tested about what I'm going to call, because I don't like the word gaslighting, but I would call the he said, she said game, where it just makes it very not fun if you go into a conversation with someone, come out, and then you both just say, I said this, no, I didn't say this. You said this, no, I didn't say this, right? So the he said, she said game, most of us don't do that, right? Aside from making the game unfun, it's in a risky space. But like, if the line at Marionette is like, okay, we all kind of have this conversation about Marionette, and we know that it's probably okay to lie about having a evil ping on someone because the game doesn't really function if you can't do that. Somewhere between I have an evil ping on you and you're my marionette is a line, and that line of what people are going to be okay with is going to vary based on their experience and this is more. This has moved outside of my area of being able to talk about, but
yeah. And just to add to that, when I started playing this game, what stood out for me was the percentage of neurodivergent players in our community. And I suspect in part that's due to the explicit social contract that defines social interactions and the social structure in the game that can really, really be helpful. But it gets tricky with some of the more implicit rules, like the marionette example we talked about, which is why it can be a lot more helpful to ask players about their preferences. I think other aspects of the game that neurodivergent people may find helpful, and this is all a hypothesis. I have ADHD, but I'm not on the spectrum. I think it's a satisfaction of solving the puzzle. That is something I love about the game, although I'm also a social player. And then just the modeled social behaviors. So a bit of an anecdote. I have performance and social anxiety. And part of what drew me to this game was how terrifying it sounded. The thought of just playing and accusing people and being on the block absolutely terrified me. So I wanted to treat this game as a course of exposure therapy to treat my own anxiety. And it did just that. It served as an immense confidence boost. There's a huge amount of validation that we derive from this game. The wins are amazing. We get such a high. And I think most importantly, the community is extremely supportive and welcoming, especially when you find the right community. And I think most of the communities, in Blood on the Clock Tower are welcoming and inclusive. And that's in the very rules of the game. Just to add to your point.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think that's reasonable. And what I've started to encounter, and I know Ed and I have talked about this as well, is within our organized communities, and especially in online play, there are some common challenges that especially folks with ADHD or folks that are on the spectrum have in dealing with some of the implicit rules in understanding or grasping or being able to sort of parse those lines, and also with being able to adhere to some very straightforward explicit rules. So just as a really simple example, our community, we have a set of rules that are like behavioral rules for like interacting on the internet. Like they're like, don't don't harass people and all those sorts of things, no bullying, whatever. But then we have a set of best practices, which are a social contract for playing Clock Tower specifically. And one of those best practices is avoid over talking and avoid taking up more than your fair share of space. I am a chronic over talker. I will over talk everyone, and I struggle with not over talking people, and I made that rule. And in the online space, one of the ways that you can learn to deal with that, right? There's tools, right? And a tool that you can use to deal with that is you can use push to talk. And you can be conscious of when you're trying to speak. In-person games, like where we are right now, if you struggle with over talking and you're here and you're excited and you're on your third 200 milligram Celsius, 200 milligram caffeine Celsius of the day, you are going to struggle not to over talk people, right? And storytellers have tools that they can use to help you, like Hell's Librarian. But boy, does it feel lousy when the storyteller puts in the Hell's Librarian because you know you're the one who's over talking. Right, so there's also a self-awareness component, and I think a lot of us, especially with ADHD, struggle mightily with that self-awareness component of realizing when we start to become the problem.
Yeah, I mean, my equivalent here is like, if you've watched the streams, you will have had times where people yell at me that I'm muted, or it's muted midway through a statement. It's because I've deliberately set a timer on my push to talk. And every time it cuts off, that's telling me you really need to shut the fuck up, man. And so I will always be trying to stop at that point. I really need to turn it off every time I'm doing a grim reveal. But apart from that, it's genuinely a tool I'm using to make myself pull back. Because I can talk about anything for any amount of time, there is a reason that I've been to the first year of this convention. I basically sat in the panel room for the weekend because they kept being like, would you be interested in doing this panel? Yep, I'll talk about Clock Tower as fucking long as you like. And so I actively put a limit on myself in order to do that, which is probably like the real extreme, like, you know, AUDHD version of that, to try and make that work for myself. But you know, everyone's going to have a spectrum in there that they need to deal with, and that's the tool that works for me. And you know, people will use different ones, but it's worth remembering that is a thing that someone might need support on. So also, if someone turns around to you and goes, "I'm sorry, I feel like I'm talking too much," have the conversation with them. Don't be polite and say, "Oh, you're fine." Fucking British people. Say to them, I think you're okay, but maybe you've talked more than other people have, and I'll nudge you if it feels like it's getting too much. Like, and anyone who's recognizing they think they're talking too much is going to appreciate you, but saying, okay, I'll keep an eye out. And that's great. And that goes both ways. If you are worried about whoever talking too much, you can do the same thing. Like, people are going to respond well to it. We have a nice community. Most of the things we talk about as a community is how to be better people. That's basically, you know, every panel, every discussion that we ever have in the Clock Tower community is how to be better people and how to be better as a community. So people will want to help you. So please give them the chance to do so. Like, people love having a chance to help. It's one of the things that I push to people all the time. And I'm really struggling to do with Erica, who is lovely and has been given the job of being helpful to special guests. And I keep really struggling to ask her to do things for me, but I successfully asked her to bring me a Coke. So because
Excellent example.
it was perfect timing. Thanks, Thanks, Erica. I love you.
Just as a related note, right? Like, folks who are on the spectrum, folks who have ADHD, especially folks who have ADHD, which is my experience is the ADHD experience. So I'll talk about that specifically. If you have ADHD or you know someone with ADHD, you probably know what hyperfocus looks like. And I went through a period of time in 2023 where I played 400 games of Clock Tower in a month. So you can think about that. Yep. So that's 400 games. Literally like 8-hour chunks of time back to backing at games. That is not healthy or safe. I was dealing with my own personal shit at the time, so like that's whatever. But you do not want to do that. And if you're friends who have ADHD, you're seeing them going from game to game to game to game. I would encourage you, if you have ADHD or if you have encountered this problem, find a way to take breaks. Breaks are important and healthy. Stopping between games, and this is something Ed and I have talked about quite a lot. Back-to-back in games is unhealthy. And it's not just unhealthy for you in terms of like you're not remembering to eat and you're taking the baggage from one game into the next game. You're genuinely not going to have fun playing the game. You're doing work, right? Taking the time in between games to have conversations, to have social interactions, to do other things. Yeah.
I can never, every panel I ever do, literally ever, anytime someone asks me for advice as a storyteller, any of these things, I'll tell them two things. One of them is I'll tell them that you're running the game too slowly. I never even check first. I just tell them they're running the game too slowly. And the second one I tell them is you're running the game too slowly because you should be leaving space to chat about the game afterwards. I'm a little bit annoyed about the game that I just ran. Admittedly, it started a Vortex game, became a Leech game, and there were like 3 days and nights where people didn't die. So it wasn't entirely my fault. But we didn't have time to chat about the game afterwards. We had like 2 minutes, and I had to run down here. So I fucked up.
Yep.
We didn't talk about that game afterwards. We should have done, because I want the players to be able to have a conversation between themselves and with me to give me feedback. If we're not having those conversations, no one's getting feedback, and feedback loops are the only way anyone gets better. It is theoretically possible, and people can do it, and like I try really hard to do it. It's possible to therapize yourself. It is very possible to reflect on your own issues and do things by yourself. Do you know what makes that so much easier? It's when someone tells you the problem in the first place, and you can then address it from a position of strength, rather than having to start by going, "What's the problem here?" It doesn't have to be active feedback. Feedback doesn't mean criticism. Feedback can be things like, in the game I just ran, someone hard claimed that they'd been pit-hagged into the mutant at 5, and then they survived the night. Because I wasn't executing, why would I execute them? And then they're sat there in the final 3, having claimed that they were pit-hagged into the mutant, going, "Well, I'm up shit creek." Because you can't recount that. What can you do about it? And so we had a conversation. As I ended the game, I went, "Well, look, the person you put on the block was the Leech host. Well done. I absolutely would be executing this person. There's nothing they can do about it. So I am saying that you can feel successful as the good team. You got the Leech host. You can feel successful as the evil team. You should win this game. Here's the conversation we're going to have about it." And I had like, a minute's back and forth with that person, but I didn't get a chance to have a conversation with them being like, "How do you feel about it? What would you have done differently?" All this sort of thing, because I had to come here. And that means that I didn't do my job as in that scenario, a community leader, to give people the chance to have the feedback loop. The fact that I know that people were still talking about the game 10 minutes after this started is great. That's still good, but like, we should be building that in. So I've scheduled every one of my games at this convention to be 2 hours. If I ever run a game that takes 2 hours, it's because there's a zombie and it's gone for like 15 days. And even then, that's a lie. I've run 2 BMR games yesterday for a total of 3 hours, and there was a total of 22 days across those 3 hours. So, like, there is no excuse for games going way too long. I'm scheduling mine knowing that I run relatively quickly. Hour and a half of game, hour and 40 of game, half an hour, 20 minutes of chat. And this helps on every level. It helps with your storytelling. It helps your players understand each other. It helps them get better at the game because they're understanding each other's choices. It helps them develop their social contract because they start to understand, "Oh, okay, you responded to me like this when I said that." It helps them in every way. It helps your community because it's bonding time. I was talking yesterday on Hard Claim with Viva the Slam. I was like, what did I do yesterday? It was too long ago. About the fact that that post-game chat is also the time when you go from being the weird thing we all have when we play Clock Tower together, like where I know Milk. Could I tell you where he lives, what his job is he in a relationship? Does he have family members? I mean, until about, I don't know, 6 months ago, the answer would have been no. I know jack shit about this man, but he is a friend. Despite the fact that I know none of the things that a friend should know. But that post-game time is where you turn from someone I've played a game with and I feel like I'm getting on with from that acquaintance situation into an actual relationship that you can go forward with, because in the game you're playing the game. Outside of the game, you flip that, well, we already feel like we're quite close because we've just spent all this time having fun together, and you flick that over the line into a friendship. And that's the thing that drives our community forward, is the opportunity to suddenly be like, and this is segueing into, I'm going up and down this list, I'm sorry.
We're all over the place.
Yeah, I'm segueing into something else. This one.
I'm going to add just one more piece to what you were talking about.
Yeah, go on.
I see a few friends here from Five of Swords. So if you've never played Text Clock Tower, Text Clock Tower is a very, very different experience. It is fun in its own way. It is much higher emotional threshold because you play for a week one game. But one of the things I love the most about Text Clock Tower is that you always have the debrief afterwards, because it's in text and everybody can come along and participate when they have time and when they have energy and when they have, the ability to. And we often have very deep conversations about emotional bleed and manipulation and how things go too far, or fun things that people. It's not always just negative stuff. Obviously, like talk about fun things people did. Like you get to cheer people on. Another one of our server best practices is be each other's biggest fans. Right? It's great when you do something and somebody comes over to you and afterwards and says, "That was so fun. I had so much fun because you did that." Right? So that's just, I think, another additional piece of that. So carry on to the next.
Just one quick thing to add to that. Even as a player, sometimes I do emotional check-ins during a game and not just after a game is over. If I try to be aware of my emotions in the midst of a game, but that isn't always possible, especially when things get heated. So if I have a trusted friend in the game, I check in with them. If the storyteller is someone I'm comfortable with, I check in with them. Was I shitty? Was I a bit too frustrated during that accusation? Did I hurt somebody's feelings? Could I be a bit better? And that can help me dial back, maybe mute myself, just take a step back and decompress a little before decompressing after the game and engaging in a discussion. And I can also talk about how I debrief as a storyteller later on in the panel.
Yeah.
Let's do that. So you ruined my segue, but it's fine.
Sorry. Still a good segue.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
ADHD, you don't need segue.
Yeah, we could just squirrel, new paragraph. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier about the difference between in-game and the person you are in-game and the person you are out of the game, and those being very different people, and they are more different for some people than others, and everyone who plays the game regularly, you will see them manipulate the person they are in-game while having no intention of changing the person they are out of game, and that's a very deliberate choice. So there's a lot of things that are really powerful about this. We've mentioned earlier about some of the appeal of the game itself to neurospicy people. The other angle on this that I think really hits home for a lot of neurospicy people, especially people with autism or anyone who masks in almost any way whatsoever, they have permission to not be themselves. They have permission to do things that are in life are not only against the implicit social contracts, but against the explicit one. We get to murder people for fun. We get to do so many things. Good. You get the permission to be a villain. You're never allowed to be the villain. Everyone has to think of themselves as the hero in their own story. They have to think of themselves as the main character. If you ever find yourself feeling like you're the villain, your own feedback loop, your own subconscious makes you feel like absolute trash. And so we don't do it. But the game allows you to do that. And so what this is, there's a whole range of things here. There's the permission to be a villain. There's the permission to try new things. There's permission to defy social norms. And there's permission for people who maybe mask in day-to-day life to pick different masks and go, oh, well, I've played a few games and I've played it like this, and I don't know if this sort of thing is acceptable, but I know that people do this sort of thing in Clock Tower, so I can try it. And maybe that person has now discovered a new way they can interact on a global level because they've had a chance to try being someone new in a game that they now get to be someone new in life because they were like, oh, it is actually okay. I can do these things. So the space of the game, the social contract of the game, that it sort of encapsulates, the game is here and this social contract is unique, and everything that happens in the game stays in this bubble, and everything that happens outside of the game is outside of this bubble, is so valid and important for that permission to be evil, for that permission to change, for that permission to do something stupid, but also for the fact that it means that when you need to burst that bubble, you can, and it causes no issues whatsoever for anyone in that process, as long as you're addressing the community needs in the process of doing so. And there is a psych term under here, which I'm going to let Noor talk about.
Yeah, there are different ways to think about this. The first time my first time thinking about this, sublimation immediately came to mind. This is a mature defense that we talk about in psychodynamic therapy. I'm trained in a variety of psychotherapies. Sublimation is when you channel typically unwanted or societally unacceptable urges in a healthy or productive way. For example, I am dealing with so much rage and anger at work, but I have to be the goodest of goods. I can't do something socially unacceptable at work. I can't punch someone. I can't set my workplace on fire. But in the game,
I mean, you could.
I could. I could.
I don't think you're going to get away with that.
I don't think you're going to get away with it now.
I get arrested, lose my license. Not great for me. But in the game, I can kill my friends, I can frame them, and it feels good, and it comes with such a great release. And it's a safe place where I can channel those urges in a healthy way and feel good about it, and also try different things in a comfortable way that makes me feel a lot more confident. I'm going through a phase in Clock Tower right now where I'm trying to be a bit more outed evil, even when I draw blue tokens, because playing as outed evil is something that is extremely uncomfortable for me. So I'm doing the uncomfortable thing, just as an example.
Yeah, I mean, and like the concept of sublimation does cover this huge range of things, because it's anything like the real sort of stereotypical TV ones are the like punching a wall rather than punching a person has been in media for as long as we've had media, and it's like it's still not socially acceptable, but you've moved it way down the scale and vented the same things that you would have done, and then maybe we'd be working with that person to find a better one, but still they're choosing a better thing, and that can go.
Gym.
Yeah,
that's the healthy way, right? So it's like punch a person, punch a wall, still not really healthy. Go to the gym and punch the bag.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but then it goes all the way through that spectrum where someone might just be like, well, I'm expressing my stress to other people, and I don't want to put that burden on them, so I'm gonna have something that I can tick with, that I can disassociate and remove that. Like, I get very stressed very often. A lot of the time, it's one of the reasons I talk so much. Is it's a way I'm covering for being stressed or panicky, and so I have a bunch of things. I was sitting there clicking this pen, and then I made eye contact with Nina, who has mics on all of us and a mic in front of us, and I put the pen down and went and got. So like, yeah, I have a whole load of fidget toys which I use, and this is the tiniest version. Like, no one's gonna, I'm worried that someone's going to notice me being stressed, and I don't want to put that burden on anyone else. So I'm doing a thing, and like, that's not a big social unacceptable for me to look a little bit stressed when I'm talking to a group of people. But I'm still choosing a tiny little form of sublimation just to take that away, and it can be as little as that or as big as punching walls. There's this whole range of it. So you don't need to feel bad about doing little things to deal with little things, or doing big things to deal with big things. This is also why we get do you want to just go yell? Do you want to just go scream at the sky? Do you need a hug? Like, it's a massively underrated calming and mental emotive technique is human contact, especially for people who often don't have very much contact and don't feel comfortable initiating contact. In stress, it's a hugely effective stress adjuster because it brings there's a whole load of physical interactions that happen, but functionally what happens is that it incentivizes the person who's stressed body functions to try and match yours. And if you are calm and you're empathizing, it's very difficult for your system to try and generate chemicals to be like, yes, match their stress level. It's much easier for their body to go, oh, is this what we're doing? And bring their stress down. So if in doubt, give them a hug. Do ask first. But like, I hug everyone. Avery hugs everyone. There's a lot of people who give a lot of hugs. Brendan, Jen, like there's people everywhere who will hug all the time. And we don't see, more and more society is contactless. We're getting more and more of the implicit social contract is we don't touch people. And this is why like sports teams now are actively, the whole like rushing the field, high fives, fist bumps, like slaps, whatever, chest bumps. That is an active process that psychologists have turned around to sports teams and go, you play better if you have more physical contact. Go and high five. Then that started in the 90s, and that was literally all. It was literally just. It wasn't to celebrate more. It wasn't to do anything but make people connect more and make people feel more on a parallel.
And I don't know about a lot of you, but the pandemic has deprived so many of us of physical contact. I've been a hugger since college, but I'm so much more of a hugger now because a lot of my patients talked about how isolated they felt during the pandemic, how much they've missed the physical touch of other people. And I just want to give everyone a burst of oxytocin when I hug them because it feels great.
I'm just going to add one more thing to this because some of us are less comfortable with hugging and physical contact, and that's totally okay. And I want to share with you a trick, a lesson I've learned. My background is in competitive martial arts, and one of the things that one of the best instructor I ever had shared with me was that when you go into a fight, when you go into a match, when you go into a competition of any kind, one of the best things you can do is smile. Smiling actually releases a lot of really powerful, positive neurotransmitters into your body. It causes your body to loosen up. It causes your physical mechanics to relax, your muscles to relax. It causes a whole bunch of good things to happen. And for God's sake, you're here to have fun, right? You're here playing this game to have fun. Smile. Like if you sit down in a circle this weekend, any other time, sit down in that circle. You're like, okay, I'm a little nervous. I don't know these people. Maybe you're playing with Patters or Ben or Ed or somebody, you're excited to be around, right? Just smile. You will feel better. You will have a better time. It's just biodynamics, right? Smiling. It also, if you're in a fight, just so you know, it freaks out your opponent too. You're like, why are you smiling?
I mean, not just in a fight. It freaks people out if in Clock Tower.
Yeah.
if you're visibly happy about what's going on. I've fully won games just based on being like, yeah, great, love this. Especially as evil players, like being happy or seeming happy when people are accusing you of the correct evil team. It's like, all right.
Just think of that goblin token.
Yeah.
Nice little smile.
It's like, all right, you do you, boo. That's fine, not a problem. And it helps you win games. It's great. And this sort of drives me into something else. We quite often phrase like good social behavior in the context of winning the game. You referred earlier to some of the he said, she said stuff that a lot of the community doesn't use. The first few years when the game was booming online, we were phrasing that to people in a like, okay, if you're a good person, you probably don't want to do these things. And then tagging on and it doesn't even help you win anyway, because the people who listen to if you're a good person, you don't do these things, is half of our Venn diagram. And the people who will go, oh, I'll lose more, fuck, are the other half of the Venn diagram, and that covers pretty much everyone. So if you are having issues in your community with any of these social contract things, there are two things should be pointing out. One is, be a good part of the community, be a good person, do the things that we need you to do. The other one is, yeah, you're not going to win, are you? And you'll drive people away, and you'll make it so you won't have anything to play with. Because that's the other side of that, is the long-term road of breaking the social contract is people don't want to play with you because you break the social contract, and so they won't.
And most of the problems we see with people breaking the social contract, honestly, can just be solved by reading that one-page rule sheet, right? Most of you will die. It's a good thing. Well, in the clock tower, death is not the end, right? Like, that's most of the time when people get upset or they start to violate the social contract, it's because they're frustrated, right? Or anxious, right? And we can help one another to not run into those spaces by being welcoming, by having these positive conversations, and by making sure that people understand, hey, listen, like the worst game anybody in this room, the worst game you've ever had, I guarantee everybody else here has had a game like that, where you got killed early, everybody thought you were evil, you didn't get talked too much for the rest of the game, and you just felt like crap afterwards. And it's not your responsibility to solve that. It's everyone's responsibility to remember to make the space welcoming for everyone, whether they're having a rough day, right? Like one of the things that I wrote into our
sorry, you carry on.
Yeah,
I was just minded.
Yeah. One of the things that I wrote into our rules for our server. This is actually our number one rule for the Grim Scenario server is be kind, because you don't know what everybody else is going through. You don't know who's struggling with what. You don't know who had a bad day at work. You don't know who was in a car accident and now is dealing with having to pay for repairs and struggling. You don't know. We don't know what's going on in each other's lives, right? Like being kind to one another, regardless of if they're, and I'm gonna fucking kill you if you're evil and I'm good, and I'm gonna try to kill you if I'm evil and you're good, right? Like, but regardless of any of that, you can be kind, right? That's the kill with grace, die with dignity part of that rule sheet that makes us all want to come back and play with each other again.
A couple of months ago, I did play a game with people called Grace and Dignity. I did find it very funny. It's something that you cannot do outside of the US. You're the only people that pick names like that. Like Grace is kind of traveled, but Dignity, that's a fucking American right there.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whitest family you've ever seen in your life, right? Sorry, just an aside.
Yeah. Well, whenever I see, I'm gonna call it unwanted behavior. I think of it as coming from, I try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and I think of it as coming from a place of frustration and stress rather than the person being quote unquote bad. And I think that brings us to maybe the group dynamics in Blood on the Clock Tower. And maybe I can talk a bit about how I feel when I storytell. Because I've run a few group therapies, both when I was training to be a psychiatrist and now as a psychiatrist. I tend to feel like a group therapist when I am a storyteller, in the sense that I try to prioritize both fun and people's emotional well-being. I try to make room for everybody's emotions. I try to make it a space that is welcoming and fun for all. And I also try to check in with people who seem frustrated or maybe disconnected from the game, because I want people to experiment, I want people to have a fun time, and I want people to leave the game feeling validated and welcomed. Should we segue into, should we talk about the discussion?
About, yeah, I think we can do that.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
Cool. Go. Do you want to start, or should I start raffling?
You go.
Okay.
Yeah. No, you're rolling.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got it.
So when I tend to prioritize three things: the interpersonal relationship, the goal of the interaction, and then moral values. And these three things tend to fluctuate in terms of priorities. The goal being the game functioning and running, and the outcome of the game, and then the interpersonal relationship, and then the well-being of the people in the game. So as a storyteller, I may stop and check in with people in the midst of a game. And then following a game, I always want to make room for people to talk about their feelings, how they felt, in a healthy way that is non-accusatory and maybe non-defensive. They can come and talk to me privately, but I also want them to talk about how the game felt as a whole, and how they felt about their various interactions in the game.
Yeah, and I think there's a difficulty that Ed's been trying to bridge a little bit in terms of streaming games and games that you watch as opposed to games that you're in. Because on a stream, you're very aware that people are watching what you're doing and you're trying to model good behavior. And a while back, Ed started us kind of having these post-game conversations more publicly. And I think it's really crucial that folks understand that the group dynamics in those stream spaces are very different than the group dynamics that you're going to find in your local group that plays together once a month, in a different local group that plays together every week, in your online group that plays together every day, right? I mean, we have games running on our server every day of the week, and many people are playing a lot. And those group dynamics, people's feelings carry over from day to day because feelings aren't simple and easy. Somebody that you got upset with 2 days ago, 2 days later, you're still upset and frustrated with them, you know? And so the storyteller isn't a therapist. The storyteller is not a psychiatrist. People who run servers and communities, we're not prepared to help with that kind of stuff. But what we are prepared to help with is creating a safe space where you can have those conversations, right? Making sure that everybody feels like they can have that conversation.
Yeah, there is an interesting parallel. We could go two different directions on our sheet right now, and I've chosen one. There's an interesting parallel that I had quite a lot of conversations with some of the No Rules Bard crowd and a few other people in that sphere who also work in therapy spheres, where there are certain branches of psychotherapy which think of the therapeutic relationship, the relationship between me and my therapist, it can be seen as like a model for how to have a one-to-one relationship with a person. You can think of it as like, okay, you're going to help me interact with you the way that I should be interacting generally, and I can use that as a model for every interaction I have one-to-one with everyone any other time. And you then move into group therapies where you're doing the same thing. You'll have a therapist with a group of people that have been, put together in order to have those sort of semi-moderated, semi-controlled, but comparatively open discussions and opportunities to have a new model for group conversations. There are therapists in the UK, I'm assuming there are here, but I've not encountered them yet, that use D&D for therapy, which is really fun, really good idea. Again, it's a model where you can basically go, there's a social contract that what's in the game is in the game, you play the game, and you can do whatever you like within the game. And then you can learn things from that and use it elsewhere. And this is exactly what we're talking about with Clock Tower. There's at least a few people in the UK, therapists in the UK, who are starting to use Clock Tower as a social therapeutic technique in order to go, well, okay, I can't help you one-to-one very easily because all of your problems are to do with pressure and anxiety and large groups and how I interact when I really, really don't like Milk, but I have to be in the scenario with him, so I can't avoid being with Milk, but I really like the rest of the social group, but like I don't have, he's not a problem for anyone else. I can't get rid of him, so I have to work out how to deal with this.
I could go.
I could have done this elsewhere.
I know.
But like, there's so many situations where people really struggle specifically with group settings, and so there's some therapy tests basically coming in. People trying to use Clock Tower and other social games as a therapeutic experience, and being like, well, okay, you're struggling with these things. Let's give you a model for it. Let's use this, a couple of hours playing a game with people to deliberately try and coach the behaviors that we're trying to pull out. And a lot of the time, certainly the person I know who's done it the most tells me that they initially started storytelling and went, oh, this doesn't help. Doesn't help me at all. Because I'm too removed from the social interactions to actually help coach and guide someone. And so they had the slightly awkward experience of having to find a third-party storyteller to storytell for them so that they could then do a group therapy with the rest of the players, which was, is a slightly weird situation in the first place, because if you've got people who are having that sort of social anxiety and problems with the group, and then your therapist has to turn around to you and go, so here's this random guy who's going to run a game for us. But this doesn't have to be a therapy thing. It's worth remembering that is the way that the game is being used, and you can do the same thing if you need it to. And you can do that for other people as well. If you know that people are having issues with certain elements of the game, you can help them through that by helping them model good behaviors. If there's someone who finds it really difficult to be out at evil, and you're on their evil team, you can help them be out at evil and not feel bad about it. I've not been out at evil with you, which is sad, because I like doing really stupid things when I'm out at evil, and it'll happen.
Yeah.
But like, there's so much space in the game for it to not be a game, for an individual, while still being the game on the grand scheme.
So play therapy is often utilized in child psychiatry, but it's typically done one-on-one, where a child is placed in a room and they're given a variety of toys, and it's the psychiatrist often sits with them and observes them and plays with them, and it's a way for the child to express their experiences in the form of play. It hasn't been translated into a group format. One of my friends actually attempted to run a Pathfinder group for some of his patients. It did not pan out, probably because Pathfinder has a lot of math.
Yeah, it has about 6 billion rules.
Yes.
Which is
a lot of rules. But it
Run
is
Mothership.
Yeah.
It is something that is being explored in the US.
Nice.
And I think D&D is being utilized a lot more
Yeah.
than other tabletop RPGs.
Yeah, I'm seeing like
because of this structure of the game.
The kids on bikes type systems works
Yes.
for some people, depending on what you want. If you want the really open-ended, and if you're trying elsewhere, D&D works really well because it's so defined, and it's kind of, Clock Tower has a space in there that can be used in multiple different ways for that process, which is really interesting. It's mostly an aside, but it's a thing that you can use to think about how you're playing Clock Tower and how you're dealing with people that might be having issues. No, it's gone. Never mind, I'll find it later. It's somewhere. Thanks, Noor. I appreciate you. I think we want to talk about. I think we come back and just talk about these two bits. You wrote most of this, so you start us. We have a plan. Don't question the plan.
So one of the things, I guess one of the areas of interest for me that's related to all this is running large communities, and how in that space of having a whole large number of people playing a whole lot of games, how you create that safe space, how you create that space to have those conversations with that large group of people. And one of the essential pieces of this, and it's I'm just going to step back and talk about a technical thing really briefly, which is that when we created our community rules, we wanted the community rules to be about behavior in an online space, but not about Clock Tower. We wanted specifically to have rules that were about that. And so we created best practices separately that we said, this is how we expect people to generally behave when they're playing a game together. Okay. And the reason we did that, and the reason we're not creating strictures about like, you can't tell someone that they're your marionette unless you get their permission first, is because that's the game, and the game has its own space. But anyway, so the reason we have best practices is because we strongly believe, and I know that Ed agrees, that creating the tone for whatever your community is, for whatever your space is, whether you're running an in-person group, whether you're running an online group, whether it's just a group of friends that meet up once a month to play some games together, Clock Tower or otherwise, setting the tone of what's good behavior, safe behavior, and what's going to be fun for everybody isn't the storyteller's responsibility. It's not the community organizer's responsibility. It's a shared responsibility. And that's going to be more difficult for some people to participate in when they're coming with social anxiety, when they're coming with ADHD. Most of the moderation that we have to do in our community surrounds folks who are having difficulty self-regulating behavior because and are not able to participate in setting that positive tone, right? So it becomes everybody's responsibility. And what that means is that there's this divide that can happen between winning and having fun. It's important in Clock Tower. It's something that gets talked about a whole bunch. Emma and I have talked about it on the podcast. Ed's talked about it. Everyone talks about it, right? It's important that you try to win the game of Clock Tower that you're in, but it's not important that you win the game of Clock Tower that you're in. And so some people struggle with the idea of trying to win versus it's important to win at all costs, and that it's fun to try to win, and it's also fun to lose.
So one of the things that I use as an example of this most easily for people who watch a lot of streams, which, you know, you're here, most of you do, is that the TPI streams sit right at one end of, like, it's not win at all costs, but it's very definitely, this is where we do the new characters, we do new mechanics, we want people to show off the mechanics, we want people to play the game for the game, for the rules, for the how it works, do all the interesting things from that point of view. And then you have patters, where you can, someone will choose to be the Baron on Whale Buffet and have no impact whatsoever mechanically on the game. And that's fine. He's gone. He was here earlier. He ran away before I could call him out. And that's fine, because like Patters' mentality and streaming style is way more along the lines of, it'll be fun, won't it? And so, like, we genuinely frequently get to the end of games on Patters' server and go, oh shit, we did win.
It was the same game, right? Where it was like, oh, I'm the snake charmer. Am I going to pick Noor or am I going to pick Ponko? One of them's a demon. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah. And then I have a conversation with Milk where we're like, so you're 50-50 wrong, didn't you?
Yep.
And Milk goes, yeah, I did, yeah. So I'll let me know when you've finished executing me, right? So,
we all know what happened. It's fine.
Yeah. And like, that's perfectly acceptable and reasonable in Patter's server, and like someone picking Baron in that situation people wouldn't do it on the TPI server, because the social contract there is much more defined around trying to show off the game itself to its best potential rather than the community or the entertainment aspect. And you know, that is kind of a spectrum. I could sit here and go and put every sort of stream and playgroup in that range, but it's important to remember that people get to choose as a community where they sit in that range. What's critical is that, like any spectrum, no one is ever going to occupy the exact same space in that spectrum as anyone else. Even if they're only a fraction of an inch one way or the other, there is a difference. And so no matter where you want to be, if you're only going to accept people within, I don't know, 5% either side of you, you're not going to have anyone to play with. So no matter what, even if you are strongly at the win at all costs end of the spectrum, or strongly at the win by just having a good time end of the spectrum, you need to have allowance for people to play differently. And if you're being too concrete on that, you're not going to have fun, and you're doing it to yourself. And that's one of those situations where you need to be talking to your storytellers, and more often your community managers, community leaders. I said managers and I didn't mean that. Your community leaders, and there's a very strong divide between those two terms. A community manager is someone who has time to do shit like scheduling, to do shit like running server events, to do reviewing complaints, all of those things. Those are management. Those are management things. I was trying really hard not to look at you as I said it. No, those are all management things. Your community leaders are the people who, when they do things, people follow by instinct. By complete instinct, as they just trust those people. Those are the people that are sometimes harder to spot, but they often fix problems before the community managers ever know about them. They're the ones who tell the community managers about the problems. Oh, by the way, these two people are having a really bad time. You might need to look into it as to whether it's something that escalates to a level you need to deal with. On the TPI server and a few other servers, I am a community manager. On other servers, I'm a community leader.
Yeah.
So like
You can
it's
be both.
you can be both, and you can be both in the same place. Like on the TPI server, I do sort of occupy both, and it's a bit weird because it makes it harder for me to be a community leader because people are also aware that I'm a community manager, and therefore I have all the behind the scenes of, like, for example, on the TPI server, people are allowed to say, I don't want to play with this person. I just don't get on with their play style. I don't want to play with this person. The only person who sees that is me. Like, literally no one else sees that. That's very specific. I made it very clear to everyone. I'm the only person that sees that. You can tell me anything, and I'm not going to ask questions. There are a lot of people who don't know that other people have asked to not play with them, and that's fine. We're choosing to do that for the sake of a good experience on stream, a good game on stream, like a more fun game, people having a better time. And so it makes it a bit more awkward for me to then be a community leader because people are always going to be a little bit wary that I know things they don't. And that makes it much harder, but it's still possible. That's sort of the kind of community manager dichotomy. You do end up being in a position of authority, which pulls you away from being part of the community at times. And anyone who's had those sort of positions will understand that slight awkwardness of sometimes you feel like you're running a group that you're not necessarily as much a part of as you were when you accepted the position to run the group. And that's something that as a community, we also need to recognize. You need to remember that the people who are giving the orders, making the mandates, passing down the rules, are also members of this community and want to be treated like that as well. And it's really hurtful for those people when they feel excluded because they're trying to make your life better. So it's a really careful line to walk as a community to help those people do the job they need to do, give them the respect they need to do that, and then in everything that doesn't apply to this is the ruling I'm giving you, treat them exactly like everyone else, because that's what they want to be. They're only doing the community management thing because someone has to, or because they're an egotistical maniac. But he is sitting next to me, so I shouldn't.
Honestly, but I mean, Ed's hit it right on the head, and this is just like a personal thing for me. Share personal things too. The reason I play in other places than my community is because when I play in games in my community, everybody's on their best behavior. I think, I mean, I don't know if it's okay for me to say it, but I'll say it about me. I'm very uncomfortable going into public games a lot of the time, and it's not to do with the people in those games. And I love playing in public games. I play a lot of games. It's very uncomfortable because people genuinely act differently, and it's very difficult because if I go into a game on my server, people act differently. And so I have to go to other spaces where I am not a community manager to have that experience. And I know Ed has that experience, Emma. Many of you also run communities or are managers and or participating in moderation or whatever in your communities. If you're here, you're probably a community leader, to be honest. Like if you're actually interested in the stuff we're talking about, if you're the person who, when you see somebody who hasn't been talked to like for 2 days because they got executed on the first day and there's an evil ping on them, if you go talk to that person and make them feel included in the game, you're a community leader. If you see somebody who's having a bad game, if you like see, hey, oh boy, they're probably the demon again, and you go chat with them, oh, thank you so much. You're the best. You're probably a community leader.
It's also not global. Community managers, they change very rarely because there's a wealth of institutional knowledge there. Community leaders change on a day-to-day basis. You might be a community leader in one subsection of your community and not elsewhere. You might be seen as a community leader by some parts of the community and not by others. And you might put yourself into that sort of leading the charge position just by going, oh, I think this is a good thing, so I'm going to do this. And people will recognize that and follow you. And so you've just inched yourself a tiny bit up in that social ladder. But it's also important to recognize that you're actively doing that, and it's important for other people to recognize that you're doing that. I talk all the time about fixers, and they can be either community managers or leaders or just people who notice. There's always people, you can look at every community and go that there's people who, when there's an issue, as soon as they know about it, they can fix it. They just probably don't know about it 90% of the time. That's why those are the people that I pick to be community managers. Because at the end of the day, community leaders will change all the time. They will change. Like people, have moving friend groups. They have moving charisma, moving priorities. Everything changes, and so those community leaders will move around. the people that will fix the problem when it gets brought to them, there's not very many of those. And so all of the people I pick to be community managers are going to be people that probably don't hear about the thing, but people know that once the information gets to them, they'll deal with it.
I'm just Noor, but I play in a lot of places because I like seeing the different social dynamics and the different implicit social contracts that other groups have.
Oh, that's it.
You're not just.
I meant to.
Just Noor.
You're great.
I'm just no. Anyway, I couldn't not hear it. Yeah, I was going to say I haven't played games at a convention for 3 years that weren't curated because I cannot do that. Because the game becomes, for some people, I bet I can beat Ed, and that's not fun for me. It's not fun for them either. Because if they win, all they did was played me. They didn't play anything else, and I didn't care. I wasn't playing them. I was trying to play the game, and I didn't have fun because what? How can I? I'm not playing the game. I'm being played. So like, I just don't play publicly unless I'm relatively confident that a storyteller can guide things and that the group is going to be playing sensibly. So sometimes I've genuinely walked into games and said that. But then that introduces a whole new social contract, and that's a really awkward thing because it's really fucking egotistical, isn't it? Can you imagine me walking into your group and being like, "Don't be a dick. Don't treat me like I'm special." Like, by implication, it means it applies that I'm assuming that I am, and I don't want to be. I don't mind being here on this side of the desk in front of the microphone, talking to you because I think I have things to share and I can help. I try my best to help this community. Like, I was talking to John Jengset yesterday. A lot of you don't know who John Jengset is, which is absolutely incredible. And I love that. It's a real sign of how the community has changed. John Jengset was the Rules Inquisitor. He is in the rule book as the Rules Inquisitor. So all the stuff that I'm known for, of like being the rules guy, knowing all the things, that was John. John is a computer engineer, a coder. He's a genius. He's one of the most intelligent men on the planet. He's being paid a very large amount of money by tech firms to sort their problems out for them. And he did all of the work on the original game, trying to make it make sense. John's the reason that the Pooker works. Like, John's the reason that we have the gossip looking back and it not being weird, the Poe looking back and not being weird. There's all of the things that are complex about the game of John. And no one knows who he is, and he loves that. Because the only reason that he and I do the rules things is so that people will have fun playing the game and we have a better community. I couldn't give a shit how good the rules are, except for the fact that every time I make a rules correction and help with a rule being better and a character being better, I avoid people having a bad time. And that's why I do what I do. And so there's a really strong point in here about, like, people are choosing to play the game and they want to be here to have fun. Everyone is here to have fun and here to be part of a community and make friends and do new things. And they don't need to be known for it, but you need to recognize that's why everyone's here. No one's here to be a dick. No one's here to punish you. No one's here to target you. I'm here to target milk and patters. I'm here to target patters. I still have it as an objective.
Imagine somebody showed up to this con just to be an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, if you just showed up here to be a dick to people, please leave.
Yeah. I still have it as an objective to get Patters to kick me off his server. I'm so close.
I think you're so close.
He's ended 2 separate streams by saying "fuck you" and then ending the stream. I'm this far away. I made him shut down the general chat for.
Oh yeah.
he actively stopped people being able to post in his general chat for like 8 hours the other day because I kept getting people to compliment him.
Oh, that was fun. That was fun.
And that's just like, that's the relationship we have. We have a lot of fun with it, but like, no one is being a dick deliberately. I'm being a dick to Patters because that's how we have fun. And if it ever crossed the line, I know Patters would tell me. But no one is here to be a dick. Everyone here is here to have fun, and everyone is here to be part of a community. You don't play Clock Tower in the long run to just win all the time. Because if you're playing in the long run and you are winning all the time, you get bored and you leave.
Mm-hmm.
If you're playing in the long run and you're not winning all the time, and the only reason you're here is to win all the time, you get frustrated by not winning and upset, and then you're less pleasant to play with. No one wants to play with you, and you leave. The only reason people stay in this community is because they want to have fun. They want to be with people that are like-minded and are interesting and do weird and wonderful things. And they've made so many friends that they never expected to have. And they know people from all over the world. And like at this point, I could, if I wanted to travel literally anywhere, I could drop a message in a Discord server and go, "Has anyone got a bed in, I don't know, St. Louis?" And I'd get 3 or 4 people go, "Yeah, right. When do you need to come?" Right? That's why people, they want to be part of a community and they want to love each other and have a reason to share. So it's always important when you are most frustrated, when you're anxious, when you're feeling pressured, when you're out at evil and feeling alone, to remember that everyone is here to be together. And this doesn't just apply to the game, this applies on the planet, but I really wish some people would remember that. On a grander scale, everyone is here to in that mentality. So if
You're
that,
not the
if
only one that feels that way.
yeah, and if that can be the little thing that you throw your anxiety to go, no, people are here and they're playing with me for a reason. They're not just like, everyone can't possibly hate me or I wouldn't be allowed to play this game. Everyone can't possibly not want to play with me or I wouldn't be welcomed. They wouldn't even be talking to me. It's such a driver of humanity to want to connect and interact. Give yourself the space at any time you're concerned, anytime you're panicking, anytime you're worried, anytime you're anxious, anytime you think someone else is anxious, remind them that you're all here together and it's a fun thing that you're here to do. And if they're having a bad time, find the way to make it fun again and remind them that's what we're here for.
Everybody's always trying their best with what they have.
And if you need it, come get a hug or a high five or a fist bump, or go get one from one of your friends, or go get one from some awesome person like Jen who gives amazing hugs, or Brendan who will lift you off the ground. Like, everybody here wants everyone to have a great time.
Also, you're very welcome to give me hugs at any opportunity. I get a lot of hugs from people I don't know names. I'm so bad at names. If I don't talk to you on a daily basis, I do not know your name, but I will recognize your face. Give me a hug. You don't have to have done it before. We don't have to have exchanged words. If you come at me like this, I will give you a hug.
I think we did almost everything.
I think so.
I didn't say the word catharsis, so I'm going to say the word catharsis, and you can ask me about it later. And we promised we were going to save time for questions, which we have 10 minutes left for.
Bollocks.
Or you can just come and ask us. Do you want to say one more thing?
We will do some questions and then we'll work out. We might just overrun a little bit and I'll get shouted at if I have to. Because that's generally what I do. I just decide that things are happening and then people don't argue with me, which is nice. It's a good white man attitude and it works for us sometimes. When I'm using the white dude power for good things, I think it's all right.
Then I'm going to decide. It's time for questions.
Great.
Noor's in charge.
We knew that.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3 across that line with the order I saw them, and then Andy 4.
Yeah, just go that way.
Yeah.
Go.
Sure. So you speak about the responsibility of being on players in storytelling. And I think what I've observed, and I'm thinking of a particular game that happened at this time, where if you see or witness a breach of the social contract, there's kind of an initial shock. And I wanted to sort of get a panel view of the threshold you go over to say, hey, something's wrong here. The threshold to act and try to smooth over the social contract certainly has not. Just want to get the panel's thoughts on that.
Sure, it's a really, really good question. So a big violation of a social contract, this would be, from my mind, this would be someone explicitly lying about something someone else said, I think. You need to think about whether this is a misunderstanding or whether this is actually something where someone is trying to use this as a tool in the game and make, from the storyteller seat, hopefully you've listened closely enough, or as a, someone who's involved in this game, hopefully you've listened enough, as a player in the game, hopefully you've listened enough to be able to say, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with something that's happened. Can we pause and talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, specifically, the timeout is the unused but much underappreciated tool that should be used just anytime. Anytime there's a moment where you feel like people are getting actually upset. Anytime where someone said something and you feel the air go out of the room. That's the biggest tell. I have this all the time, especially when I'm running like completely new groups who've never played together, or like bringing together groups that have sort of weird combinations like you get at cons of people with hugely different metas. People will do things that other people are like, I don't like that. And that's the perfect moment as a player or as a storyteller. It does not have to be the storyteller that does it, just to be like, we just take like 30 seconds to stop, and then come back in. And you can say that like, I want to take like, I often use silence as a tool. It's just, we're going to take a timeout. Everyone's tensions got high, so we're just going to stop for 10 seconds of silence, and we're going to wait for 10 seconds, and then when I'm going to talk again, and then we're going to restart, and we'll have the 10-second silence. And 10 seconds is a long time, and please time it, because you will not think 10 seconds is not what you think it is ever. And when you restart, that's the time that you can say, okay, this is what I think has happened. We've had a moment to reflect on it. I think we can move on in this situation. I think that maybe we need to have a private conversation just to sort of clear the air. I think maybe you two need to come and talk, and I'm very happy to come and moderate that for you. But having that break first is the most powerful thing, because 10 seconds is enough for almost every basically chemical in your system to have hit and then dropped off the peak. And that's all you need in order to have just moderated the response that little bit. Like, almost everything hits in that moment, and you're just off the other side. You're not down by any stretch, but you are over the peak. And so you're not feeling the response hitting you, you're in the emotion, and therefore it's a much easier conversation to have than being hit by the emotion.
What I would just add to that is, if you've had that, the threshold is, if you've had that break and it happens again, now you probably are in a situation where you need a much larger conversation with the group of people that you're playing with. And at the point where you feel that someone is starting to be, and I want to stress that a very distinct difference here. Our feelings get hurt all the time. In games, sometimes your feelings get hurt, you get frustrated, you get upset. If you feel that someone is being harmed, that's the point at which harm being actual hurt, actual emotional distress, that's the point at which the game is no longer relevant.
Yep.
This is real people having real experiences. The game I have ended games, and I don't like doing it because I think it's a very drastic measure. But if you reach the point where the conflict has risen to the level of interpersonal conflict beyond in-game conflict, it's very difficult to bring that back. If you paused, if you stopped, and if you said, hey, let's everybody take a deep breath. Okay, we're going to try to continue the game. We're going to carry on. If you have to stop again, it's likely that you need now to think about, okay, we're probably not going to recover this. And it's better for everyone to not continue to be harmed.
And if the storyteller doesn't step in, as a player, there are several things that I may do depending on what the breach of the social contract was. I can clarify with the offending player what had happened, to see if it was a misunderstanding. I can check in with the distressed player and stop my game, and I have done that. I've had players break down crying in games, and I've just stopped playing and checked in with them. And if it's extreme, I'll bring it to the attention of the storyteller, and I'll bring it to the attention of the group, because the game doesn't matter anymore in that moment.
So just to repeat the question for who's losing the quiet voice, like the psychological impact of lying on oneself by lying, and how that changes the way or by others to you? It's a Noor question.
So in the
Your
game, doing that, but consequences outside of the game. Maybe so. Just there are actually no studies on that. So it's something I've looked up. I have not found a lot of evidence on that. I can tell you that I haven't noticed any changes within me. This is all anecdotal, of course. Though my partner often jokes about how I am now a pathological liar and potentially antisocial. I do not share that view. I would love to see more studies on that, but there haven't been. And this is all role play. And I think that's the important distinction. I do not lie outside of the game. I only lie within this game, within the space. I recognize that it's role play. Outside of the game, it makes me extremely uncomfortable to lie. It violates one of my core moral values. And it's why I play the game, because it makes me uncomfortable. And I've actually noticed improvements in my anxiety and in my confidence, although I've still experienced a lot of anxiety, for example, on this panel. I would love to see more studies on this. I think it's a very fascinating topic. One of my patients, he has treatment-resistant schizophrenia. One of the ways we bond in the hospital is to play board games. And he is fascinated with the social deduction genre. And one of his favorite board games is Clue. And I think it's improved his ability to mentalize and think about how other people are able to think and manipulate. But I don't believe it's made him a better liar or made him a liar at all. I hope that answers your question.
I was just going to add a tiny bit of anecdata so you can have a sample size of 2.
Sure.
Great.
Sample size of 3.
Yeah, I have pretty much the exact same experience. It's made me more capable of lying and a lot more capable of improvisation, like a hell of a lot of improvisation, because so much of Clock Tower, the lies have to adapt on the fly. And so, yeah, my improv has massively improved, but it's also made me way more uncomfortable lying in any other situation. I used to be very happy to do the white lies, and I really struggle even to do those now. I basically just don't. In the rest of my life, and it means that actually the improv is now helping, because as a result, what I'm doing is wording around things. Whenever I would have done the you look great type like white lies, I'm just finding different ways to say things. Because of Clock Tower, that's like the lies feel so uncomfortable, but it was also making me way happier to be like, I'll just find a different way to say something nice. And so that's my personal experience of it, which I think is interesting.
Anecdotally, a different experience. One of my strong ADHD issues that I struggle with is rejection sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with it very, very, very severely. And due to that, one of my toxic traits is I'm a peacemaker. And one of the things about being a peacemaker is that sometimes you lie to try to make it, because it's easier.
Yeah, smooth things
because
over.
You smooth things over, and you don't want to hurt people, and you don't want to make people feel rejected. And I already struggled with that prior to playing Clock Tower. Clock Tower has made me much more aware of when I do it, but it has not made me better at not doing it. So I would say that it has not been therapeutic in the sense of preventing me from doing the thing that I was already doing, but it's been therapeutic in the sense of making me more aware when I'm doing it. I can't necessarily stop myself, but I at least know that I've done it, and I can try to apologize or fix it later.
I'm going to go to the last question on that line, and no one's yelling at us yet, so, you know.
When you see something happen and you think you're going to need to check in with someone, when do you distinguish between when you want to do that privately, one-on-one, versus when it needs to be a whole
I can start. I always start by doing it privately.
Yeah.
I think that's my preference. I I always worry about other people's feelings. And my immediate thought is if I do it publicly in a group setting, I may be making that person uncomfortable. Not making, but leading them to feel uncomfortable. So I start by doing it privately. I see if they want to do it in a more public way, if it's extreme, if they feel if they feel very uncomfortable, and we go on from there.
Sorry, I didn't mean like someone specific. When a discussion needs to happen,
Ah.
like when you decide that it's a discussion, the whole group should be involved in not seeing it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So this is much more like person and group specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The vast majority of the time, I will, again, you default to a private if you can, but I will almost always try and do public where possible, because it gives me an opportunity to model the behaviors. What I was saying earlier about like trying to have the conversations on stream that we have off stream is I will always, if I have the opportunity to make something a private conversation to make sure I've resolved it for the relevant person, and I can make it a public thing so that it maybe gets spread to a full community. There's 120 people on the TPI server. If I have a quite private conversation with someone about, say, a difficulty with a certain like reaction in a game, I've maybe fixed the problem for them, but I've not helped anyone else understand that there's support there. And so if I can find a way to make that a public thing, I will do. So like these guys will see me put things in places being like, oh, I've had a conversation about this recently. And I wanted to publicize that to everyone. This is how we're dealing with it. And this is the sort of thing that comes up and we can deal with it. And it's telling people two things. One is that we're dealing with the problem. And secondly, you need to tell me the problem so that I can deal with it.
Maybe we can build. The next group needs time to set up.
Okay, we can go away.
I have been texted.
Great.
Can we do the one more? Are you okay, Happy? I don't want to steal your time.
When you're storytelling in person, so you don't have to advance, and there's at least one player overall, is there anything like default you bring in to expand on?
Oh, yeah. Read the rule sheet.
Yes, that.
Always read the rule sheet. If you need to expand on Rule 4, the two main things that come up are over talking, right, which is just making space for other people because it's not explicitly stated, and the game does say you can say anything you want at any time, but again, that doesn't mean you can be a dick. And then the other thing is making sure that everyone gets a chance to participate, and that means reminding people to talk to dead players they think are evil, right? That just makes your gameplay better anyway, but those two things I think are like the main thing that needs to be very clearly stated about, for new players especially, is that make sure, yes, you can say anything you want at any time, but don't overtalk, and make sure you include everyone, because everybody's here to play.
My slight angle on that is I make a concerted effort when I'm running games for new players. I obviously have the rules talk down pat because I've done it so many fucking times, but I try really hard to make any time I'm referring to the evil team as light-hearted as possible, because it's very easy to come into Clock Tower being like, they're evil, they're against us, and it's very easy to think in a very us versus them way, and no one's going to have fun if you think like that, because it's what feeds all the confrontation and all the problems that can come in your first games. So I make real effort. Every joke I make in the rules talk is light-hearted about the evil team, trying to bring that tone upwards rather than driving the us versus them mentality. And I think it's not directly impinging on Rule 4, but it's just giving people that mental nudge of, no, you want to, this is fun, and it's fun to be evil. It's also fun to talk to evil. There's a lot of interesting things about evil, and driving that mentality, because there's so much about the word evil, which we use about 12 times in the rules talk, that has a lot of associated sort of stigma and mentality focuses.
Avoid the word bad. Use evil.
Yeah,
Don't
explicit-
use the word bad.
Yeah, very clearly
Really
a capital E evil is really
Capital
important.
E evil.
Yeah. And so I'm trying to really change the way that, not change, but like drive a mentality of how people are thinking about the game to help Rule 4 exist.
I just want to say one more thing about that, and I just, because Happy's up. So, no, but I just want to say something about Happy. If you've never watched CTBOTC, please go watch them. They stream on Fridays. They're maybe
Yeah, no, let's do that.
Genuinely nice. But listen, the most important thing as a storyteller, as a person who's running a community, as a person who's engaging with other people at all, is to have a positive tone of voice. And Demeta has the most wonderful positive tone of voice. I'm going to call it Pie as well. Bill Pie. Bill Pie dresses up as a carnival barker to run his games, and it is the most positive thing. If you sound bored or uninterested, or if you sound like you're not enjoying running your game, no one is going to have fun. Bringing that positive attitude is a huge thing, and you should genuinely express it as much as possible in your games. You should be happy to be running the game and having fun. Ed does that. Noor does that. Every Patters. I mean, if you ever heard Patters just laughing his butt off, running, right? Just genuinely, you should be happy to be there. If you're bored, if you've ever played with a storyteller, it's like, okay, somebody died. Get like 2 minutes. It's just not fun.
Okay, I'm going to actually end this panel now because we have definitely run over by 10 minutes, and Happy can kill me later. Specifically, thanks to Milk for being an incredible human who helped come up with a lot of the starting idea of this. We just kept having conversations about the neurospicy and ADHD and like our experiences, and then we're like, we should probably talk to other people about this. We're just an echo chamber, and it's really interesting to share with the community. And then Noor, who actually knows what she's talking about.
I learned more talking to Noor about this for 30 minutes than I have learned about ADHD in years. So.
Thanks to Nina, who's recorded this whole thing.
Nina.
So online later. Don't thank me. I would much prefer it if you didn't thank please do talk about these things with anyone and everyone. Talk about it with your local group. Think about all the things that you maybe have learned or you maybe recognized about the game, and try and make your community a better place to be, and give us hugs.
As every
Thanks, everyone.
good human.
Free hugs.
Yeah.
Thank you all.